Okay, I see people are arriving. Thank you again for joining us. This is our third episode of The New Normal. I'm Brian Morrissey, and we're really excited about this show. And I think a lot of what we're talking about during this, I mean, we're living it at Digiday. We're like anyone else in media and pretty much the broader economy, in that we've got to adapt our business. And there are a lot of opportunities actually that come out of this. Something we're going to talk about today with Rafat Ali and Jason Clampet, the co-founders of Skift. And that's because, there's a whole bunch of different challenges, but it forces companies to adapt, and you can come up with new products that will absolutely stay around after this ends. And I'm assured it will end at some point, but we just don't know when. One of the things that's very clear from all of the publishers that we're talking to is this is going to have a lasting impact. And this is going to accelerate the shift to subscriptions. I mean, look at this. Basically every single publisher, 88% said they're going to miss their business forecast, and 12% are lying. We know that. So that's first and foremost to ad revenue. And that is going to happen, event revenue, commerce. But the bright spot is subscriptions, because, we are seeing, and the data backs that up, that there is a corona bump, if you will, across all kinds of subscribers with different kinds of reader revenue models. And this is from Piano, and they are our paywall provider. I know you guys at Skift built your own, but we just went with with Piano, and Piano's seeing this across all their publishers. So that is a good development, and it's one that, is it going to taper off? Probably. But we're not sure exactly when. That said, it's not true across the board. This is some research that was done about the different industries that are seeing accelerating, limited, contracting, or skewing, and so that's important to keep in mind. But finally, before we get to the conversation, just wanted to talk about a little bit. Mark Thompson talked about this. And you can read the quote yourself, but really, we're going to talk a lot about tactics and stuff like this, but it really just gets back to value, right? And I think Rafat and Jason and I are going to talk about how this sort of causes you to sort of have a little bit of introspection about, like, what is your true value proposition as a publisher. And I think it's worthwhile. I mean, I don't think anyone in the publishing industry, or just anyone in general, would wish for this kind of thing to happen, but it does cause you to really think about what's most important. So with that, and excuse us for the technical difficulties, we can't control the internet. I want to bring in Rafat and Jason. Guys, welcome to the New Normal.
Of course.
So let's talk about, like, when you guys went first. I mean, so let me go through enough times gone by that I can, maybe you can have a good. So one, you're a bootstrap publisher, right? So you're subscale, right? And that has its advantages, but its disadvantages, because, like, cash flow is even, like, more. Two, being a B2B publisher, you got a heavy events in your portfolio. This sucks. Three, you're focused on the travel industry.
The best industry in the world to be focused on right now.
Oh my God. How did you get out of, like, I don't want to get out of bed mode?
Well, we still have those times. I think yesterday was one of those days that I had. It's the stories that are keeping us going. Like the amount of stories that we can tell today, our editorial team and our research team and the whole company is doing the best work of their lives. I mean, this is probably true for your company as well. By the way, I should say you guys are doing a great job, all of your team. I want to definitely commend all the work that all of you are doing. It's what we read to get a sense of where to go. And so it's, you're sort of in a fetal position for a while, and then you get up, and then I don't know if you have kids, but they have this when they grow a little older than just being a total baby, they start this tummy time. And then when they have tummy time, then they start to crawl, and then they crawl and they run. So it's basically us relearning that phase again.
Are you in tummy time?
No, I think we're out of we're
Okay.
out of tummy time. I think we are. Well,
I don't have kids, but I have nieces and nephews, and I remember tummy time as being like a very
there's cruising before crawling. So
a lot of drama in tummy time. You don't know what's.
Yeah. So, tummy time is you turn over and then you sort of, I don't know, whatever. My 5-year-old son.
This is now a parenting podcast.
It's a parenting podcast.
Yeah, whatever.
So, so I think for us, it hit early, as you said, because we are in travel. China, when it hit China, Chinese travelers are the biggest global force in travel. Everybody watches the micro movements of where Chinese travelers are going. So as soon as it became public in, say, mid-Jan, we knew things were going to get bad for the world focused on Chinese travelers, didn't understand how bad it was going to get, obviously. So we moved early in cutting costs and hiring freeze, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if it gives us an advantage. It just probably gives us a month more than anybody else, but a month more these days is probably equal to a year these days.
Yeah. So Jason, I want to bring you in because I talked with you, I think, at some points over the last 6 months or so about membership and subscriptions, and you guys were on this path, right?
Yeah, we were already. I've got a number of emails in the last few weeks, and people have said, "How did you guys move so quickly to?"
That's what this is about. They should be here right now.
For this contribution model. I said, "It's easy. We started last year, and we were ready to launch something that we had spent a year."
So talk through that process. So last year, so first, Skift, the revenue model is events, sponsored content,
and subscriptions,
ads, and then the third legs is subscriptions.
Yeah, and so we had a research product that's about 4 years old now, annual subscription, individual and multi-user subscriptions. So we had that for years. But back in January of last year, Rafat and I started talking. We said, hey, paywall is the right way to go for Skift. We do fantastic content that people rely on to do their business, to do their jobs better. So let's just, get a paywall up, get contributions direct from readers. So we decided we wanted to build our own system to do that, just because we didn't want to rely on a third party for that. And we have all these little special things we like to do, so we wanted to have the flexibility of that. So we started working on it in March, April of last year. Realized we needed to cobble a few things together. We were ready and launched our new product in September of last year for our research product, and also Airline Weekly, which is a aviation industry newsletter. And so it was kind of behind the scenes. Users didn't really see that, but we had that ready to go. And after the new year, we're going to dive straight into launching the paywall for Skift, and realized that it was probably not the right time to do that. So it was pretty easy to turn it around.
Wait, can you just explain, either both of you, why it wasn't the right time? Because when these crises hit, you're seeing, you've got big events, those are not happening. Your core base is so everyone's looking for cash. Why wouldn't this be the time? Yeah.
So look, we exist in the travel industry, which is the most hurt industry today in the world. Millions of jobs lost, billions and billions of dollars of value lost. For us to gate our stories that in a time when the industry needs it most. So it has to be a balance between yes, our own existence and our own existential needs, and serving the travel industry. And what we couldn't have done is gone zero, continue as normal and free for everyone, everything. So we balanced between not launching a subscription service, at least for now, because one, it wouldn't have gotten the traction. Second, it would have sent probably a bad signal at this stage to our community. And
You
then
mean
there were
even though you're planning it, you mean the signal would be like, oh no.
that in these times when we need your work most, like if we're not there for the travel industry in the time of their need, why would they be there when, you know, when the industry recovers? And so that was the equation. You know, that's the hypothesis we went in with. Who knows if that was the one, but that's what we chose. And then the decision was, I think it was really just Guardian's model that let's do voluntary contributions. And I asked Jason, hey, how quickly can we launch this? He says tomorrow, because everything is ready. And it literally was, I think, Jason, you can talk to this, but it's probably like 2 days after we just made a decision to do it.
Yeah,
because it was just ready.
Yeah, I think it was 2 days. So, you know, we had the panes and the sliders on the site saying, you know, you've got 3 more stories out of 5 left. So we just converted all of those to push the contribute message instead, kept the value propositions on those pages, and then just changed the kind of checkout process.
So explain. So this is this visual that came up is just the pivot to support. The original plan was going to be a meter.
Yeah, metered paywall, 5 stories a month, and monthly recurring subscriptions.
So the strategy then went to, for those unfamiliar, the Guardian has sort of pioneered I think in this like way. I mean, NPR, but like, you know, the Guardian has seen success. I had Evelyn Webster on the Digiday podcast. I guess it aired this week, talking about the success that, you know, they've had, not putting up a paywall of its, you know, there's a lot of different flavors of paywalls, but with asking people for support. What did you see there that gave you the thought that, hey, this could work?
So for now, it is significant incremental revenues. I would use that phrase. So we launched on March 18th. So it's really been 34 days, 35 days today since we launched this. It feels like 35 years, but yes, it's only been 35 days. So we have you know, almost 6-figure revenue in the last month, which is a 6-figure that we didn't have 35 days ago. And so I'm gonna, if I can continue on that path, that is significant revenue that adds up. One of our thoughts is that at some point the goodwill, which is there for us, because obviously we are wearing our own pains on our sleeve. It's no secret that you know, companies in travel are hurting, and people value our work, so they're giving us these contributions. Some of them recurring, majority of them are one time. So we have both recurring as well as one time, but I would say like 9.9 out of 10 are one time, and then you know, 0.1% probably is recurring. And yeah, so that we at some point the goodwill will probably run out, and then we will. One of the thoughts that Jason and I have, in fact, we already started working on it, is to go back to the original plan, which is a subscription paywall. Yeah. Interesting thing would be, is there some sort of a hybrid between continuing some contribution for people who don't want to subscribe, but still want to support us at a lower rate than, let's say, whatever the subscription amount is, yeah. and then have the subscription as well. I think Guardian has that both, I think. Yeah.
They do. One thing, just I forgot to mention it. Please do use the Q&A function here. It's on the bottom of your screen, and well, I will mix in your questions as we go on. But please do. We want this to be as interactive as possible. What are you seeing? What's the option most people are taking, and what's the average money that they contribute?
Well, I'll actually jump in and talk, misdirect a bit now, but talk a bit about the pay what you want, which we're seeing for our events.
That happens. Usually people don't admit when they're, I appreciate that, Jason. That's a good
we're very transparent. You know, moving to the pay what you want for events, we're seeing a little less than half of everybody who attends an event makes a contribution. because we make it part of the registration process and give some suggested amounts there. And so there is a great deal of engagement with it. And so, it's a really good learning as we think about other things we can offer down the road.
Yeah. Can you talk about messaging a little bit? Because how do you, and I'm sure you guys thought about this a lot, is like, we all have experienced the NPR, Brian Lair, like exasperated, like, Day Nations Drive, where he's just like, all right, we didn't get our goal yet. So here I am again. With Rafat, you said, like, you wear the pain on your sleeve, but at the same time, like, you don't want to,
come across as desperate. Yeah.
Have a tin can out
Yeah.
in front of Walmart.
Yeah. And I think that the way we say this is like, we lead with the quality of our work. So keep that first in your mind, whatever we do. We're doing crucial independent journalism in this time that is needed the most for this industry. That if you want to support it, then here are the ways to do it. That is the pitch. Independent, crucial are the two key phrases. Crucial because now is such a crucial time for this industry to understand these millions of headlines coming at them from left, right, and center. Independent as in we're the independent voice. We're not an industry association. We're not a booster of this industry. We're not the booster of this industry in the best of times. We're not the booster of this industry in the worst of times. That's been the hard part to explain to people, because we are critical of the industry even now, like where if the industry associations are not doing the right thing, if the companies are not doing the right thing, we got some flack on, like, why are you beating down on somebody who's already down? Well, that's not our role. Our role is not to boost up the industry. We're not launching a solidarity podcast. It's not us. Our role is to be the realist and skeptical observer of the industry. And it's hard. It's hard.
It's a tough one because you always get like whacked. I think particularly in B2B, I know over the years, it's like you get a lot of messages saying you need to be more supportive, and sometimes that's taken as like you need to be a cheerleader. At least that's the way I hear it, and I think that's the way maybe I'm inferring. But like when it's like, well, actually, there's a more valuable role to be played in being, a critical
voice in this industry. Yeah. And the readers basically message that to you through the back channels. It's not like, even if they're not doing it through the front channels, they definitely message to you through the back channel. So that's the fine line we did. We came up with this creative campaign on Skift Going Dark, which was, I think, one of the slides maybe. This was a campaign we launched, I think 2 weeks ago, but at this point, the days are blending into each other.
Only a week ago.
Only a week ago. Okay. So, which was a campaign that one of our, from our in-house studio, one of the team members came up with this great idea of showing our value. If Skift goes dark for 24 hours, will anybody give a shit? And so, the site went completely dark, which is black, and journalists took a break, and the whole angle was we're giving a mental break to the journalists. So in fact, the journalists didn't work that day because they'd been working like crazy for the last 2 months. That's Patrick Keene's face I saw.
There's a little preview.
So this, you'll see the Skift Goes Dark. It was a risky campaign. People thought we're going out of business. We're not going out of business, but we are trying to continue to communicate our value to this industry. This is as much a business pitch as it is an editorial pitch. And we got a spurt of contributions after that, people emailing, et cetera. And I would veer towards alarm than complacency.
Yeah, that's true. Josh Jaffe came in with a question for you, Rafat. Is like, what are your tips for B2C publishers who may be planning to launch a subscription offering for the first time this quarter, say about horoscopes. I don't know.
I think that I started this site called Paid Content. I don't know, millions of years ago. At this point, I had hair and was obviously much younger. I think about my general advice would be B2C is very hard to gate existing work. It has to be something new. It has to be with some regularity. Obviously, it can't be like a monthly newsletter because you just don't have enough volume. And B2C really needs volume. It's just the fact of life. And so I think creating new services that are adjacent to your existing services, it would be my sense without knowing the details. Like that would be the first advice is like, what is the one thing that you could either carve out or create new that would make sense?
Okay. Jason, maybe you want to take this. This is one we got beforehand. We asked people for questions. There's a lot of virtual events out there. How do you stand out as users get overwhelmed by all the virtual events everyone and their mother are offering? There's a lot. These are great times for the hardcore webinar fans.
Yeah, I did a webinar with a cooking school last night with my daughter, and it was, outside of our events, I'd say like the best event that I've taken part in during this time. One, we made a delicious meal and she interacted and it was really great, but it brought value. And so when we do these events, we have an editorial director who spends a lot of time programming them. And even though we're doing one a week, there's real attention to detail there. We get guests who are leaders in the industry. To this week's one that we did, for instance, with Destination Management, we had the CEO of leaders from Visit Florida, Visit Puerto Rico, Brand USA, top tier people talking and talking through real issues that matter. And so it wasn't just an online thing to have an online thing. I think that's how you can differentiate. Like, just don't throw something together and get 3 people on a webcam.
Brian, do you remember when the iPad first came and those magazines, all the Condé Nast and Time Inc. and others wanted to launch iPad magazines?
Oh yeah.
And I tweeted something then that sort of got semi-viral among the 5 people that care. I just said, if Time magazine was crappy in print, chances are they'll be crappy in an iPad magazine as well.
Yeah.
And so that's the philosophy that I take with these events. If we were good in our physical events, chances are we'll be good in our virtual events, whatever the constraints are.
Yeah.
And lead with editorial quality. And I think that versus, obviously you've seen a lot of vendors launching their podcast as well, which I applaud. I mean, this is what they need to do to get their voice out. They may not have the marketing budgets today to do something larger. But at the end of the day, there's going to be a shakeout, much like it's been a shakeout in every new format that you and I have gone through over the last 20 years. And while there's a glut of events, the good news is people do have a lot of extra time, which means that the numbers that we're seeing in a B2B content are astronomical. Like we've done, we own this thing called Event Manager blog, which focuses on event planners. So we not only do events, we cover the business of events. Because it's part of
travel plus events.
Well, because that's the industry. It is part of the travel
industry. We're going to open a restaurant next.
And you were in restaurants. We
were. We shut that down a year
just
ago.
Hit them all.
I know. Great sense of topics. And so they are in fact doing an event. They're doing it. They did their first pivot to virtual. That's what their first event was. This was 2 months ago. They were really early in this. With 6,000 event planners, we had to cut it off because Zoom has charges like a crazy amount after 6,000 people, and so we shut it off. They have one on April 30th. We're going up to 6,500 with that. We're already at 6,500 now, so we had to shut it off, and there's still like 4 days left. And so the participation in a B2B context is astronomical for now. And Jason, I think you have this number up.
But I think it's funny because Rafat, you've always been preaching against scale, and you can actually scale in these digital events in a way that you cannot. I mean, you guys do some big events, but like you I'm surely you see this scale because you can do totally global and like you don't have to. There's a lot of advantages.
Yeah, I mean, look, 25 years into the internet, suddenly like we're excited about the world opening up to us. And it really is. And I think that I turned a corner myself in my head, and really because of Julius. Julius is the guy who runs EventMB. And probably about like 3 weeks ago, it was like virtual events are here. I think for the next year, this is what it is. Let's be enthusiastic. Let's just run with it. And we're doing a Skift Forum Europe, which was supposed to be in Spain end of March. Obviously, not going to happen. We moved it end of June. Not going to happen in a physical format. So we're doing it end of June as a virtual event. Suddenly, from 400 to 450 people in a day. That's what typical our one-day conference does. $1,000+ ticket.
Are you scenario planning to have no in-person events this year? I mean, it's like realistic, you're not going to have it.
No, yeah, exactly. So we have, as of, I would say 2 weeks ago, we have realized there's going to be no physical events. We're here in New York. The majority of our events were unfortunately in New York, just a number. And so New York will be the last city on the planet, I think, to come back in terms of physical events.
I don't know. De Blasio is planning a parade.
Yeah, surely not attending that one.
That's a different podcast. Yeah, Jason, I had a couple of questions that we can direct towards you. Although Rafat said it, I'm going to make you answer it. From Andrew KM says, you said you've done the best work of your lives recently. Any examples? See, that's the question I should have asked. Give me an example of that is the best follow-up question, Andrew. So thank you for that. Also, any particular topics or themes in the travel industry you're focusing on in the next few months? And please be more specific than coronavirus. What are you looking for as far as the big trends that coming out of this? I mean, obviously travel is in like complete triage mode for a reason.
Yeah, Rafat, you want to tackle
it? So Jason is completely off editorial, which is why he's logging it off to me, where I still work quite a bit closely with editorial. So for us, it's what part of travel comes back first. That's the big theme. So the general consensus is local travel that you can get in your car and drive to. We live here in New York, upstate New York, 2 hours away, etc. And you either check into a hotel, but preferably potentially even an Airbnb. I mean, I know a lot of people they think Airbnb's moment is gone, but I don't think so.
But you think Airbnb is better positioned than hotel chains?
In this scenario where you can control your own space and you need less people around you.
But I saw one hotel, like they've got like, I think they just like ginned it up, like some like hyper cleaner sort of thing. And they're going to be marketing the fact that like,
potentially, and I think
got a Marriott Bonvoy 4,000 that can like disinfect.
Yeah, and hotels are coming out with the news about how they're going to clean. Accor came out yesterday. I think Marriott came out yesterday about the hyper cleaning that they're going to do. They're tying up with tech companies or whatever science companies to figure this out. I think that
like resort fee, like $50 like Corona cleaning fee.
They'll make it optional.
Don't give them those ideas, Brian. I just hope nobody from the travel industry is listening. I do think that we will be traveling with our own cleaning supplies for a while to come. And no longer will we look at the person that cleans the seat in the airline. Remember, like a few of those.
Naomi Campbell got all this shit for her like wipe down routine, like.
Yeah, no longer.
Shit anymore.
Yeah, no longer. So I do think if you can control your own. So certainly that's one thing we're looking at. We're looking at whether business travel will ever come back to the peak that it was because of all these things. Like people may not need to travel as much. Conferences will take a while to come back, may not ever come back at the size. We're looking at, we were discussing over tourism as late as 2 months ago. And so guess what's happening now, obviously. So where does that go? We're looking at how does the airline boarding process and seating process, et cetera, all of that change. We're looking at what happens to the small businesses, like travel, much like any other sector, but travel particularly is made of small businesses, mom and pop. A lot of them are either out of business or will be. And so we're looking at the small business rescue across the world, not just in US, but also happening around the world. So we're looking at different themes. We're looking at, I wrote this piece that the coming future of travel in 100 questions. So we're good at asking questions. So we came up with what are the 100 questions that the world and us are asking in different parts of travel on what's going to happen in this sector, that sector, that sector. So we just put it together as questions. And I think we're going to launch it next week. So just trying
answers or just questions?
Questions.
Okay.
Because, our job is to ask questions. That's the industry's job to come up with the answers in the coming months. So just try to come up with all types of creative formats. We've been very critical. So somebody was asking a question, what are you proud of? We've been very critical of the cruise industry's response. We've been critical of the cruise industry for a while, but particularly in the last 2 months on sort of the delusion that they were not responsible for, this sudden bloom in cases, obviously. So we've been critical of that. We've been critical of industry until late March was still saying it's okay to travel. It's okay to travel. So we've been very critical of that. So we continue to be critical of things that we think are important.
Who have been standouts? The Delta gets a lot of credit. I think
at least in terms of their communication. And I know Marriott's CEO, when he came out with a video, it became as viral as an industry CEO video can be. And so certainly with the right empathy and the right message, Delta has been really good at communicating. Like every week, if you're a member of their loyalty program, you get a very detailed message on here's what's happening, here's what. So I would say those two brands are certainly on the large side, have definitely caught our eye. And then their creative campaigns from destinations, whether Faroe Island came out with this thing last week that's getting a bunch of press where because they have very few locals in those islands, they have a video cam on their head, and you as a user on the internet can control where they go on the island. Right. It's kind of a gimmick, but it's kind of cute.
So this can go to either of you because it does fall between. What's the response from Tim Mullaney? And he asked about the response from Skift's editors and reporters to moving as you've moved to a subscription model. This is a little bit different, but maybe as you move towards a subscription model, do you have any tips on communicating to the newsroom about the business decision-making on this front? I feel like this is less of a hurdle now than it was 5+ years ago. I don't know, but maybe.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. I think the other advantage is we've never made page views a key part of editors' lives. We always view things slightly differently because we're a B2B publication. And so we might have a story about business travel or meetings, and it might get 1,000 page views, whereas a story about an airline overhead bin issue might get 100,000. Well, we know that the 1,000 people who viewed the meeting story are more our industry people. They come back more often. They're not just drive-by users. And so in that sense, the page view count doesn't really matter to us. It's what the user does next. And so luckily we don't have that problem communicating.
Yeah, it's funny because I've heard of this, and I never run into it. Maybe it's the type of people that we've been able to attract, but I feel like particularly maybe it's younger generations, but we have all generations of journalists are very attuned to the business realities around them. Perhaps it's because they cover the media. They know exactly what is going on and how sustainable media is a really difficult thing.
And also, I think, particularly true in a small business like ours and yours, that we all, when we had an office, we were sitting in the same room, literally.
Yeah.
And so we all see what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, it's not as abstracted as if you're in some 1,000-person company
Yeah.
and stuff. So just a couple quick of these questions that we got ahead of time. Maybe we can knock a couple out. One is about M&A. Do you see M&A playing a quote unquote helpful role going forward? And if so, how? I mean, look, I don't think anyone wants to sell at this time. I mean, maybe not exactly a great,
well, so we bought 2 companies. Maybe that's what they're referring to. We bought 2 companies in the last 2 years. Small, but for us, quite strategic, and for us is large because we're a small company ourselves. And so we bought these. We were on the path to buy more. In fact, I was in the middle of a third one as late as Feb. And obviously that's not happening today. And but I would like to be in a position in a year to be able to look at companies to buy again. For us, these are smaller subscription focused or just very vertical, very niche focused things that may not have scaled, may not have the tech that we have, may not have the marketing machine that we have, may not have, and we can buy them and then add things like events, whatever the shape and form of events is, virtual or physical. So that's been our philosophy, which is in airlines, we bought Airline Weekly because airlines is such a giant sector. In the meetings and event space, we bought EventMB. EventMB is an advertising support. It does not have subscription business, but they've added these virtual events for now and then physical events as events come back. Can I get something in corporate travel? Can I get something in the hotel owner investor space? So these are very, very niche things that I'm interested in. I am glad about the rationality in expectations that will be there going ahead. This is not just an M&A, this is in anything. Like as a business owner, and I'm sure this is the same for you, the costs have definitely come down. And so this is a if we don't take advantage of the lower cost base now, then shame on us.
Yeah.
So I think that going ahead, all if there is a silver lining, it's that one, we've realized we don't need an office potentially going ahead. Business travel may not be that big a part of our expenses going ahead, at least for a while to come. In general, talent may cost less, et cetera, et cetera. So all these things add up, and media, which is not the biggest margin business in the world to begin with, at least we have a better shot at it than in the past.
Yeah, I mean, the margins can get a lot better. I mean, you might have lower revenue, but you might have actually better profits.
I mean, events, look, the B2B events that you and I do, 50% revenues?
Goes as far as I can tell, $22 to some people cost.
It's mostly F&B.
Mostly, AV. And so from a good scenario of like a 50% gross margins to now, yes, the revenue will be probably 1/3 in a great scenario than a physical event, maybe 1/4. But the margins are 95%. And I'll take it if I can do 10 of those.
So just the final thing, and then we'll wrap it up, because this is something we actually had discussed before the show, so other people weren't here. Was sort of going back to, you sort of go back to your knitting, right? In times like this, once you get out of the fetal position, you guys are 8 years in, and we've seen it here at Digiday. You sort of like, you go back a little bit. There's a little bit of muscle memory to, no matter what, it's, these kind of businesses are gritty businesses. I was just talking with Ian Bell from Digital Trends, and he was talking about that, about how gritty you have to be when you don't have like a bunch of venture capital backing or whatever. You got to get even more grittier, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's pretty gritty. I was thinking back. We launched in the summer of 2012, and a few months later, it got hit by Hurricane Sandy. So it feels like now a 5-week-long Hurricane Sandy, where we're all working from remote places and trying to do our job and break news at the same time. And so that feeling, it's a nice, energetic feeling that comes back, especially when you're 8 years into the business and it's changed somewhat. And we've never acted comfortable, but it was comfortable to a certain extent. We knew everything that was kind of happening through the end of the year. Now, we make a decision on a Monday and we try to have it up by Wednesday. And so we're back to that really quick thing. We turned on a live blog back at the beginning of March to cover coronavirus. The last time we'd done a live blog was in year 1 of operation with the merger of American and US Airways. And so in many senses, it is a return to that, like get back, move fast, turn it around and perform.
I mean, the sheer hustle as an entrepreneur, and hustle is a way overused word. Nobody even knows what that means. But, the energy flow that you have back and forth, and Jason and I, back when we started Skift, were in our own houses, much like this, except no video and Zoom and less social media. And so, used to be, Jason, can you tweak that on the site? And then he said, okay, it's done. Can you look at it? Like literally that back and forth on things that we were doing. And in many ways, that's been the last month. Jason, can you do this? And he does this. And Rafat, what does it look like? And I say, okay, yeah, this is great. Let's go with it. So it's that type of back and forth that, if it wasn't existential, it'd be exhilarating. But unfortunately, it's not exhilarating, but it's certainly the energy flow has been as good as it can be.
I just add real quick. Luckily, we have a deeper pool of talent to rely on now. So
it's not just us now; it's the whole company.
Rafat asked me to do something. We've got a great team of developers. We've got creative people and marketing too that we can rely on.
Just a couple quick questions came in, and then we'll wrap it up. But just on, can you go through, Jason, specifically like how the pay structure is in place for the paywalls? Like, do people just like randomly decide the amount? Do they choose between like levels?
Yeah, for the contribution model, the separate from the webinars, we have preloaded amounts, but you can also choose amount of your own.
What are they preloaded as?
I think it's
5,000.
Yeah, 50, 100.
So it's like a Vegas ATM.
Yeah, 70,000. No, it's I think 50, 100, and then 250 are the pre-selected amounts, and then you can choose your own amount. Then when you flip over to recurring, it's the same thing you can choose. And then on our webinars, we do the same thing minus the recurring thing. So it's just, you can pay 25 or $50 or, pay your own amount.
Okay, and if I ask you the average amount, you're going to answer a different question or pretend.
I can answer. I think the number is $33, if I'm not mistaken, on webinar.
That's about right.
Yeah, so it's a 90-minute to 2-hour webinar, and so we probably would have charged, if we were charging $50 to $75 or maybe $100, and so obviously we wouldn't have gotten that many number of people attending. And so I think we're getting $33, I think, is the average.
Okay, so final thing that came in from Anonymous is, let's just assume you're going to move to a subscription model at some point. Obviously, the first question ends up coming like, will this cannibalize our existing advertising / sponsor content business? Advertising is always, less of a slice of the pie for B2B, but how do you balance that?
We have a different relationship on the advertising side because any banners and boxes you see for other brands are related to larger campaigns, whether it's something happening at an event, virtual or in the past live, or for content that we've created in partnership. And so all the stuff that we create with a brand like an Accor or Marriott or Delta, that will always be in front of the paywall and might get more promotion because will always be free. And so we don't have to worry about the massive loss of page views.
Got it. So just to wrap things up, I want to bring up the takeaways because we just want to give people some learnings. Rafa, do you want to like talk through these?
Yeah, I think one, always lean on your editorial to lead. I don't know if this is in these takeaways, but I'll mention it anyway. We editorial is the engine, and I think you have the same philosophy. Is the engine that will take us to recovery from here. It is. There's no other way for us to recover on the other end. So, editorial and research in our case are the rock stars that will, and we will continue to build a business around them now and later. So that's definitely editorial. There's no other tricks. It's not like there's a magic trick that we're doing. In terms of continue to show your value. It's not just enough for you to do great work, but also continue to talk about it. It's not like Journal or Bloomberg is knocking on my doors and saying, let's do a cover story on you guys. No, like we have to be our own mouthpiece and be a little bit bold and sort of unashamed about it, because that's the work that you're doing. You should be proud of it. And chances are, if you give your readers a way to support you and be open and honest about it, they will. And I said this maybe a little bit, like no external parties coming to save small businesses. In this case, our government hasn't done a great job of that either. And so, it's not like VCs are coming again, throwing money over my door to say, here, take money. They didn't do that in the best of times, like the worst of times now. So you just have to depend on yourself. And I think that really is, and so the elemental lesson that we're taking away from it, which is, depend on your team to do this. Ask them, if you include them in the sacrifices that you're making, you would be surprised out of your mind and how much that helps. And the fact that they're doing amazing work, they're taking the hits, they're taking the sacrifices that I'm sure even in your company and other companies they're doing. And that's been just the most gratifying thing, I think, to take out of this, is that lean on your team and then lean on your readers, and they're the ones that are going to take you on the other side.
Yep. It's just about getting to the other side, and ideally stronger.
Ideally very well positioned to help the travel industry. This is in our case, the travel industry recover.
Right. Cool. Jason, any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
No.
Okay. We'll leave it there. Guys, I appreciate you taking all the time and sharing all this with us. So it was great. And before we wrap up, just want to tell you, next week we'll be back with a new episode. We are going to be talking with Pat Keene. Now we can show Pat Keene. Now we know why Pat Keene was lurking in the slide deck. Pat is the CEO of Action Network. Talk about a hit. I mean, they're all about sports and they're all about betting. And so we're going to talk about how they're adapting to get through to this other side when there's no sports. I mean, there was a draft last night. I'm glad that the Eagles took a wide receiver. I'm very excited by Rieger. And he's going to talk about this adapting. So please join us next week. It's going to be at noon again. So thank you all for joining us. And thank you again to Rafat and Jason.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, team.